Hello, how's it going? Right now I'm about to go over what are the best and the worst exercises for your back by ranking 23 of them on this tier chart. And what I mean by best are the ones that result in, I think, the most growth but also functional strength. And what I mean by your back is, of course, the lats, but also the musculature of the scapula, like the traps and the rhomboids, and then the posterior shoulder, like the teres major and the posterior deltoid, as well as the rotator cuff a little bit. Basically, everything that's going to make a visual difference in when you take your shirt off from behind, or anything that's going to make you stronger at pulling things. All right, so with 23, let's go ahead and jump into it. We're going to kick things off with vertical pulling motions. Okay, so we're going to start off with the partial pull-up, and I'm starting with the partial pull-up because this is overwhelmingly the most popular variation of the pull-up, right? People are, craning their neck up 10 inches, and they're doing this little chicken peck at the top, right? So they're cutting themselves short 10 inches at the top, and they're, only coming halfway down. I think a lot of people end up sleeping on pull-ups because of this, because if you don't hold yourself to a high standard, you're not going to get a lot of results. I'm going to put that in the mediocre tier because you can do a little bit of, you can do work, but directly comparing it to a pull-up, pull-ups are awesome. When you do a full range of motion, you're going to get a nice stretch at the bottom. You're going to get a good squeeze at the top. Moving your body in three-dimensional space, everything about this pull-up, or everything about the pull-up, is absolutely great, and you can get a lot of power. And in particular, you can weight it up, right? Put a belt around, and you can go as heavy as you want. This is absolutely going to be S tier. And if you like the way my back looks at all, the pull-up and the weighted pull-up in particular, with a full range of motion, has been my bread and butter for years. Okay, moving on to cable variations, right? So cable pull downs, basically, I got 3 here, and there's so many different ways you can vary it. I'm just going to talk about a few. The mid grip pull down, right, pronated. I really like this. Why? Because it's the most similar to a pull-up, and I think this is most useful for building strength into pull-ups. But you're going to get a good range of motion with a narrower grip, and you get almost all the same benefits of a pull-up. So I'm going to put that in the A tier. But again, I think its best use is for developing strength so that you can do better pull-ups. Let's do a supinated pull-up as well. All right, so with an underhand grip, you get a little more bicep. A lot of people tend to be stronger here initially, but I can say I'm actually a lot stronger with a pronated grip, and I think that's because I am quite proud. I think I have a very well-developed back, and I think a pronated grip is naturally going to be a little stronger, actually, if you reach a certain developmental point. But I think this is a great way too with the internal rotation of the supinated grip. You do stretch your lat out a little bit more. I think this is certainly a good way to train. It's a little bit different, but certainly valuable. I'll put that in the A tier as well. And the wide grip pull down is the other one I included. That's also really common, right? I see a lot of people taking the super wide grip, well, which is okay, right? The idea is you can kind of disengage the arms and focus on the lat, which is kind of fun for a bodybuilding perspective, but there's not really any benefit from not using a muscle unless it is just really helping your focus. But I don't think there's anything really functional about that, and I don't think it's optimal developmentally either. So I'm going to put that in the C tier. Moving on to machines, also for vertical pulls. Look, I really like machines. I use a lot of machines in my training, but particularly when we talk about the back, there's so many different muscles working together. You have a lot of motion from the scapula and the shoulder, and I think just the complexity of it, I think using free weight is going to allow you to line everything up a lot better and work more freely. So I've done some good machines that are that feel okay. It kind of depends on how the machine is contoured and what type of resistance it uses. So I do think these are good for growth, but I don't think they're ever going to be optimal, right? I think you need to be able to free up all possible um, ways to move your body to really get the most out of your back. So I'm going to put machines in general kind of for vertical pulls in the B tier. And then with that, we'll go ahead and move into horizontal pulls or a row, okay? And there's kind of some debate. I define row as pulling something from in front of your body into your body. Okay, so a horizontal pull is a row. As far as I'm concerned, we're going to start off with a not so bent over row because this is unfortunately the most common variation of a bent over row. And that's you can get some heavy weights, you get a little bit of movement, but especially comparing it to alternatives, I'm going to put this in the D tier, right? I think it's just another example of a low standard. I don't think there's right. I don't think you should have high expectations if your standard is low. I'm going to compare that directly to a bent over row where we actually bend over. When you do that, you do a couple things. One, you load the entire posterior chain. Two, you greatly increase the amount of range of motion available, right? And now your torso is actually more perpendicular to gravity, so you're getting that rowing motion, front to back that you want. This, I said the pull-up was my bread and butter. Maybe the pull-up's the bread and the bent over row is my butter. But these two together, right, get a free weight, heavy, you can load them as much as you want, get a good vertical pull and a good horizontal pull. I think these are the gold standard. Next up is a pendlay row, which is a variation of the bent over row. These are much less common. You start from, every rep starts from a dead stop. The weight is on the ground and the movement is initiated intentionally with your hips and your knees, but just for a very short piece of the motion, and then you finish it with your back. It's very explosive. I think for athletes, pretty much any kind of sport where you're on your feet, especially something like football players or rugby players, I think this is an incredible option. I don't think it's necessary for everyone, but if you are looking for athleticism and explosiveness through the posterior chain, I think this is one of the best options available. A supported T-bar row. These feel really nice sometimes. Right, great for the posterior deltoid, teres major, and the scapular musculature. And depending on how the machine is set up in your body, you can sometimes get into a good position. But I just think you're missing out by not choosing a more loaded, like something like a bent over row where you're loading the entire posterior chain. I think it's definitely worth including. I've included these a lot myself, but it's not going to be as complete an exercise as some of these other options. So I'll put that in the B tier. Next up is the nutcracker row. I don't know what it's actually called, but I mean, just look at it. I don't know who came up with this. If you want to load your traps really heavily, if you want to get a lot of weight on your traps and your hips, then just do a deadlift. Okay, if you're setting up and trying to do a row like this, where you have a plate hitting your chest and you have nobody wants you going for a ride on taking a ride on gym equipment. Please keep gym equipment out of your crotch. There's just nowhere to go. This is going to go straight into the D tier as well. Okay, get your hands out of the way and find something you can pull on with a better range of motion is my recommendation. After that, we'll look at the dumbbell row. These are super common. I think they're overrated though, personally. Yeah, there's always, every time I see these, there's a lot of cheating involved, and I think some cheating is a really important thing actually to maximally load your back. But these are always excessively cheated. Usually people get lower range of motion. If you are getting really heavier dumbbells and you're strong, then the size of the dumbbell itself is going to start to get in the way of your range of motion, and it just becomes, I think it's really easy to let the hips take over here. And usually doing it rotationally, that's going to, sometimes that can create some issues with your core as well. It's like, how well are you actually rowing and how much are you kind of heaving? So I don't think this is the best option to really get the muscles that we're talking about with the shoulders and the back. So I'm going to put these in the C tier as well. I think the best benefit of a dumbbell row is holding really heavy weights, and you can just do that with a deadlift. So I don't think there's any unique benefit to it. The incline bench row. These actually feel really nice if you've never done these before. Set it up, and at the top of the range of motion, it feels really good in your traps and behind your shoulders. But the issue here, I think, is, I just talked about how I think cheating is actually important a little bit, right? Moderated cheating for maximally loading the back. You can't really do that on an incline bench row, and the resistance curve just does not follow the strength curve. And then additionally, with big dumbbells, you're going to get in the way of the bench anyway. So I think there's just too much going wrong with this exercise for it to be worthwhile. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the trash bin. The seated cable row. So our cable variations of rowing, I guess that covers the free weight rows. With the seated cable row, I do like this a lot. I think it's the closest thing you can get to a barbell, right? It feels a little different. I think it can be a little easier on your low back, depending on how the foot supports of the cable machine are set up. But you can get a great range of motion. These are, yeah, I do like these. Yeah, especially if you focus on, right, the benefit is you can lean forward so that you get more of a stretch in your lat as you're dropping the weight. I think those are great. I wanted to include the one-arm cable rows as well, because I know a lot of people do these, and I've included these. Anytime you do anything one-armed, okay, you're going to be able to cross your hand over the midline a little bit, and so you get a little more range of motion. And then as well as you're engaging the spinal musculature that's involved in rotation as well. So I think these are a decent option as well. I'll put them in A tier. And then this one's a little more unique, a one-arm high cable row. Okay, it's almost more of a vertical pull down, or a vertical pull actually. But this, again, using the one arm, we can cross that arm over midline, and we don't have an issue there, so we can get more of a stretch. And then I do like cables, right? We can set this up, and we can pull, moving our shoulder and our arm exactly in line with the shape of the lat itself. So I think for the lat, this is probably the exercise I feel the best, right? Because you can really focus on how the lat is contracting instead of focusing on any particular movement pattern. I'm going to put this in the S tier as well. I mean, I don't think it's, you can't go super heavy with them, but in terms of long-term development of the lat and feeling it contract in a directly in line with its pull, I think that's a really great thing to include. All right, machine row variations. Like with the pull downs, some of these feel great. There's certainly advantages to machines. They're convenient, but I think you're disadvantaging yourself by not using free weight. Again, I think these are a good inclusion, right? If you want to focus on particular muscles, but yeah, just bear in mind that I think these free weight options should be your primary focus. And then a high machine row, this is going to be the same thing. I kind of like this machine in particular that I have pictured here, because with your arm going in front of you and above you, I think you can get a really good stretch on the lat. Some machines are certainly valuable, but it's just not going to have all the benefits of the other things. The straight arm pull down. I really like this one a lot, because I think with the, similar to doing something like a cable fly with your chest, I think the resistance profile or the resistance curve of this movement lines up really well with the strength curve of the latissimus dorsi in particular. So I think you're able to get a really active resistance through the entire range of motion. These are a lot of fun. Plus, there's some scapular benefits to keeping your arms straight, learning to control your scapula in that way as well. I think this is going to be an S tier movement as well. Dumbbell pullover next, and this is you know, it's theoretically the same movement pattern as a straight arm pull down, but the difference here is at the top of the, when your arms are above you, right, there's no resistance on the any muscles in your back at all. So you're really only doing work at the bottom of the movement here, and I think that's okay, right? I think it's okay for building strength, and you know, you're also strengthening them in a stretched position. So I think that's has some value, but I don't think it's nearly as valuable as, you know, its brother, the or sister, the straight arm pull down, where you have all those benefits, but you have resistance throughout the entire range of motion. Plus, it's a little less convenient to set up. All right, so moving on to some more posterior shoulder oriented exercises. The reverse fly. These are fairly common. I think they're overrated as well. You know, you have this kind of the same issue with the dumbbell pullover, where you really only have resistance at the top of the movement. You can certainly initiate the movement using your deltoids as well, but it's easy to cheat. And look at these. I mean, the way you bend over to do that, I just think these are uncomfortable, and I don't think they're optimal. I think they're okay, but I'm going to compare them to a reverse fly machine, where, again, the resistance curve of the machine in this case is going to give you a lot better contraction throughout the range of throughout the entire range of motion, and it's more convenient too, and you don't have to bend over. I really like the reverse fly machines are, I think, a little more valuable than other machines. As far as the back muscles go, because it does give you that option. I think a lot of people aren't really familiar with the way the posterior deltoid and the scapular muscles kind of feel, right? It's a lot harder to feel than something like your chest. I think the reverse fly is a great way to feel that out as well, and get a great workout as well. Then I'm going to talk about two face pull variations. The first one here is going to be, I'm going to call it like a closed angle face pull, okay, where you grip the, right, I guess, so you're gripping the cable from the inside, and then you're actually pulling it straight into your face. In this way, it's kind of like it's very similar to the, you know, reverse fly or the reverse fly machine, where you're focusing on primarily shoulder horizontal abduction, right, swinging your arm out to the side and getting it behind you. And you can go kind of heavy with these, and I think you feel them a little bit better in the scapula, but I think it's just an inferior row, really. I mean, you're taking a potentially very strong position and weakening it. Right, they kind of feel nice. Again, you know, if you're not sure what those muscles feel like, I think it can kind of help you, but those are, you know, just do a row. The other face pull I want to talk about is going to be an open face pull, or an open angle face pull, right, as you see here, where your elbow is at a right angle, okay? And so by doing this, you introduce a rotational component, right? You're engaging the external rotators of your shoulder as well. And this is really great for your posterior deltoid as well as your middle deltoid, and then the rhomboids and the traps as well. I think this is kind of a unique combination of muscular involvement that's going to help you posturally, but also we're engaging the rotator cuff, and that's a pretty neglected muscle. I think, you know, I got these from Athlean-X. You know, he's pretty awesome. I'm really glad I've been doing those. I think they've really helped me a lot, but I think that's one of the most unique exercises in terms of the benefits that it has that are hard to get anywhere else. So I'm going to put that in the S tier as well. And the last exercise I'm going to talk about is the deadlift. And I always thought this was really weird. You know, if you know anything about biomechanics at all, you can just look at the deadlift and say, well, okay, that's obviously a predominantly hip exercise, followed by the knees. Okay, your back is working isometrically. But my kind of stance on this is, you know, if you finish a set of deadlifts and you're like, oh, my back is just fried. Wow, yeah, that was great work for my back. My opinion is you have an extremely weak back, and this is a problem. I don't think you should be deadlift it's a leg exercise. Okay, if you're calling it a back exercise, you need to be doing bent over rows and pull-ups. You need to strengthen your back because something is wrong with your deadlift. So I love deadlifts, right? I do them twice a week, but I'm going to put them in the D tier for back exercises because they are a hip exercise. All right, that about sums it up. So that's all the exercises. If you want to know what my program is, S tier. Okay, that's my workout. Yeah, I think, yeah, of course, A and B. You know, if you like them, if you have a good reason to include them, they're solid choices. But I highly recommend all those exercises in the S tier. Pull-ups and bent over rows are should be your bread and butter. Other than that, I wish you all well. May your backs be as large as mine one day. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know. And if you found this helpful, then go ahead and please subscribe. I always appreciate that. Other than that, thank you guys and take care.